Hey, it's Rob, Travels with Dottie, and it's someday in October. I'll have to check. It's the 26th of October, 2025. And I'm going to tell you about the worst 6 mistakes I've made as an RVer. So maybe you can avoid doing the same things. It goes from mistakes that created inconvenience to the last one, which is a mistake that pretty much cost me my first RV. It cost me everything. A very simple mistake that I made. But I'm going to go through them one by one, and I'm saving the most expensive one for last to manipulate you into watching the whole video. Shameless, isn't it? But, you know, they say that's what, what you could do is you could scrub all the way to the end and watch and see the last one so you don't have to watch the whole video. So, first one has to do with my first RV. My first RV was a Leighton Nomad. They don't make them anymore. I think Leighton makes park models now. They don't make RVs anymore. But it was a 27-footer, and it was a beautiful RV. I loved it. But what I quickly it was, I think the dry weight was about 7,000 pounds. It was 27 feet long and about 8 feet wide. So it was a good substantial RV. So $7,000 full time. Let's say I added another 1,000 to the back of the truck and the RV, or maybe more. So we're talking 8,000, 8,500 pounds. So I bought a truck, an F-150, 2018 F-150 3.5 EcoBoost that said 11,000 pound towing capacity. So I said, well, I got plenty extra there. Well, that was wrong. Would it tow it? Yes. Was it enough for it? No. It was uncomfortable driving. There was certainly, when I get passed by an 18-wheeler, there was quite a bit of shifting and sway. And there was, even though I put in an aftermarket active suspension, there was a little bit of dip in when it was hooked up. The back of the truck kind of sunk a little bit too much. It wasn't enough, right? And so that was a lesson learned. When I got a new trailer, it was, I think the trailer I have now, the Micro Mini, is like 4,700 pounds dry weight. Quite a bit of difference. I went from 27 feet to 21 feet. I went from 8 feet wide to 7 feet wide. And that's where I really came to the conclusion that it was not enough. Before, when I felt like it should feel, I realized how bad it was. And a thing that I realized that you do when you don't have enough truck for your trailer, you learn to compensate over time. And let me give you an example of that. I remember I was headed west from Virginia to Arizona, and when I first got on the highway and that first truck passed me, I thought to myself, oh my God, I've made a horrible mistake getting an RV. This is terrifying. Over the next couple of hours with all these trucks passing me, I developed some automatic muscle memory. And when I thought about it, I realized when a truck is coming up behind you, it pushes a cushion of air, and so it just nudges you gently, but it becomes a warning of what's coming. You don't hear the truck, but you feel, oh, that's a truck coming. So you prepare for it, and there are micro adjustments you make on the wheel to keep straight, and that becomes muscle memory. So after a while, it was like, oh, this is no problem. All right? It was masking the problem by creating muscle memory for me to compensate for it. I didn't know any better. I thought that's just what you did. Then when I was towing the Winnebago, there were rarely any adjustment was needed when something big passed me on the highway. So lesson learned on that. So the next one was when you put in your own electrical system, meaning you're putting in solar and batteries and a charge controller, inverter, when you're doing all that yourself. I was warned about this and I didn't heed the advice. I was given very good advice by a friend. He said, you need to keep routinely checking to make sure your connections are tight, because as you go down the road, the connections could loosen. I didn't think that was a big deal. So one day I was in Quartzsite and I was actually monitoring the solar coming in. I was so impressed with how much it was bright, sunny day and all the solar's coming in. And I'm looking and saying, wow, I'm getting like 500 watts in. This is great. And it goes to zero. I'm like, what the hell happened? It just stopped. Well, come to find out, I go in, I look at my charge controller. And if you don't know what that is, that's okay. It's a little box that takes the power from your solar panel and translates it into something your battery can use to be charged. All right? It's a charge controller. The one I had was about $300 or $400. Well, one of the last things I checked is I looked at that and I saw one of the places where you put the wire in, it was black, charred. And come to find out, it was almost certainly a loose connection. And those of you that are experts in it and might say, well, did you have too much solar coming in? No, I was well below what the charger was rated for. It was a loose connection. And Victron doesn't cover that under warranty. And it's obvious. I took it to a Victron dealer and they looked at it and they said, yeah, that was a loose connection. It's not covered under warranty. So I needed to replace it. So that was an expensive mistake to learn. So from then on, I check my electrical connections really several times a year to make sure everything is nice and tight. All right, next, the valve that you pull to empty your black and gray tank. My black tank one, it wasn't moving smoothly and it got stuck. So I decided, this was typical me with mechanical things. If it's not going in, let's use brute strength. And I did. And I messed the valve up and it was unfixable by me. I had to pay an RV tech to come out. Competent guy. It took two of them an hour to replace that valve. And it cost me something like $300 to replace that valve. It was a $300 mistake. A valve being stuck, either the gray or black or both, is a pretty common thing, especially if you're a full-timer. Things get, piece of toilet paper, something gets jammed in there, and I'm not going to go through the troubleshooting, but you can Google this and it'll show you all the things that you can do other than brute strength to try to clear that up gently and efficiently. And of course, I didn't do all those things because I thought I knew what was best, that I would just lean into it, and I broke it. And that's good advice for almost anything that doesn't work on your rig. Brute strength is almost never the answer. This is a really good one. This happened on my first rig. Hot water heater. Generally, it's a 6-gallon tank. In a big rig, maybe 10, but the most common size is 6. Some of the tanks are aluminum and others are just steel. I had an aluminum tank. And I was watching something on a YouTube video about it's a really good idea to have an anode rod inside your tank. And I really didn't pay close attention to what they were saying. And all it is on my model, to drain it, there was a plastic nut that you would take off and it would open up and you could drain it. And the anode plug has a long piece of steel on it that keeps the tank from corroding. So, well, that's a good preventative idea. I'm going to go ahead and do that on my aluminum tank. And there are probably those of you that are experienced saying, oh, no, you didn't. Why do I say that? Because you never put an anode inside an aluminum tank, only in the steel tanks. One, it does good in the steel tank, and in the aluminum tank, it does two things. One, the electrolysis with the aluminum makes the aluminum corrode faster. It makes it worse. But worse than that, as I found, is that that reaction actually fuses the part with the threads in it. It fuses it to the tank, which I found out when I went to drain it. And even with fitting it with a wrench that had like a 2-foot extension, it was like it was welded in there. It destroyed my aluminum tank. Aluminum tanks need just the plastic nut that goes in there. You don't ever put anode rods in aluminum. I didn't know that. I destroyed the tank on my first RV. Here's a good one. I'm going to show you a couple pictures on this. I thought I had a brilliant idea. I was going to get a lot of batteries, and I had limited storage. And generally on the tongue of the trailer, most come with, like mine came with a plastic box that would fit one battery. And they make plastic boxes that'll fit two. Well, if one is good and two is better, more than that, bigger than that must be even better, right? I purchased a steel box to put on the tongue that was almost 7 feet wide. And I was able to put all my batteries in there, my equipment and stuff. I was so proud of myself. At E-Trailer, I spent $700 for this steel box. And again, I consider myself brilliant. Except, here's a picture of it. Here's what it looks like. Looks good, right? Bolted on there. What could possibly go wrong? Well, think about a trailer and a truck. I'm pulling the trailer, and I go to back in, I go to turn, and you've heard of the term jackknife when you go too far. Well, it's only designed to go a certain amount before it becomes immobile. And you learn over time what that amount is so you can maneuver, so you can go over the maximum amount either way. Well, what I quickly discovered is that was designed so you could go a certain amount without actually hitting the trailer. Unless you put something in front of the trailer like a giant steel box. So here's the picture of what happened to the back of my truck, what the edge of that thing did to my truck. Boom. Pretty expensive, right? All of these things were expensive. Until you get to this one. This one topped them all. And this was in my old trailer, and I'll give you a hint. It's the reason it's my old trailer. I was sitting watching TV one day, and I look up at the light, and there's water pouring out of a light in the ceiling. And I thought, uh-oh. I think they told me if I'm going to own a trailer, I should be checking that roof on a regular basis, going up there and inspecting the roof. And you know, I've never gotten around to do that. There must be a hole in my roof. So there was, of course. When I went up there, not only it had been so long, the hole had been up there forever, because when I went up in the roof and I got to a certain part of it, it was mush. If I had put my weight on it, my foot would have gone through it. My roof was destroyed. And there was potentially good news in that, because I called my insurance company, and guess what? It was covered. So the insurance company came out, the adjuster came out, and said, well, you need a new roof, and we'll allow $5,000. Okay. I was in Fairfax, Virginia then. I didn't use an RV shop. I called a roofing company and talked to them, and they came out and looked at it, and they said they'd do the thing for like $4,500. And they showed me how they were going to reconstruct it with higher quality materials, better wood structure, better insulation, and a much thicker membrane. I was pretty excited. And they did it, and they did an amazing job. It was fantastic. That roof was going to last for 20 years. So how was that a big mistake? Let me tell you how. A few months later, I took a trip down to Florida. And I'm in an RV park there. And I walked by my RV, and something out of my corner of my eye, I looked back, and the side of my RV, it looked like it was a little warped or something. Okay, folks, that's called delamination. That's when moisture gets into your walls and the outside membrane begins to separate. And it is a death toll for an RV. I tried in Florida and Virginia, I tried to find someone that would repair, and it started over time, it started appearing in other places. There was no one that was willing to repair it. It's a very difficult job to repair, and the success rate is horrible. I've seen a few YouTube videos on people that do it themselves, and it's very time consuming and difficult, and it's just a nightmare to do, and none of them show the long term. I've never seen one that said, hey, we did this 2 years ago and it's still good. It basically destroyed the value of my relatively new RV that I loved. And when I sold it, I mean, I went to buy a new one, and because of the delamination, no dealership would consider it on a trade-in. Delamination is just a flat out no. I ended up selling it to a guy that, a wholesaler that sold it to somebody to use on a deer lease. And I think I got $2,000 for it, if that. I think it was a little less than $2,000. That cost me, that mistake, without delamination, I think at the time it was worth about $16,000. So that was about a $14,000 mistake. And what was the mistake? Not knowing enough to say to the insurance adjuster, hey, we need to do something to test for moisture in the walls. And there's easy ways to do that. And once they detected the moisture in all the walls, they probably would have totaled it. Or it would have cost, I don't know how much. I don't even think it would be repairable. I'm almost certain, if you're an insurance guy, you tell me different, but I'm almost certain they would have totaled my RV and I would have gotten a new RV. Huge, huge mistake. Now, it's not on the, I don't beat myself up over it, because it's not like on the level of this valve doesn't work, so I'm going to force it like an ape. That's kind of stupid. I knew better than that. I didn't know about delamination. I didn't have experience enough to know if you have a really bad roof leak, you're going to get moisture in those walls, and you may not see evidence of them right away. The evidence may present itself months down the road, long after the insurance claim was done, long after I accepted the insurance claim. So a good rule of thumb is when you have an insurance claim, don't just depend on what the adjuster says. Get someone that really knows what they're talking about to look at the damage to make sure that the offer that the insurance company is making you is fair. And what's the worst that can happen? You pay somebody a few $100s to do the inspection, and they say, yeah, what they're offering you is more than fair. The worst you can lose is a few $100s for the inspection, right? Let's see if it's even $1,000. Had I done that and spent $1,000, right? How much money would I have saved? So those are I sat down this morning and thought, what are the 6 biggest mistakes that I've made as an RV owner? And those are the 6 big ones. So I hope that my mistakes, telling those stories, helps someone else avoid what happened to me. So that's going to be today's video. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you found it interesting and useful. Take care.